Hello, my name is Mo, and I'm a recovered League of Legends player. I know, an unforgivable crime. But I'd like to think that I've changed. I like to prove that I can be better. And then IceFrog and Gabe Newell went, no you fucking can't. And I managed to get access to Valve's latest in-development game, Deadlock. Which is why I'm making a video on it. Because there's nothing out this week I'm interested in playing, and Space Marine 2 isn't out until next week. Plus I figured I would try something a little bit different. So with that out of the way, let's begin. While I have written about MOBAs in the past back when I was posting written articles, I haven't made a video on any of them, specifically because of the audiences that they attract. Seriously, if you thought bad sets of fighting games made people salted in the Dead Sea, see how League or Dota players are that lost an hour-long game that was held hostage by the carrier that couldn't accept that the team was gonna lose and decided to make it the entire lobby's problem. The levels of salt and toxicity I've seen in MOBAs are enough to make your average multiplayer troll in Call of Duty lobbies look like they were paragons of virtue. I've seen some cusses that would make me, a noted potty mouth, go, holy fucking shit, calm down. But to go back to the discussion, Deadlock is a MOBA at heart. For context, MOBA stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. It has roots in the real-time strategy genre, with games like Warcraft and Age of Empires, but ultimately decided that the build phase was cringe, and that killing monsters attacking towers that led to either team's base structure and focusing on killing said minions and destroying said structures and base was the way to go. Between the releases of both Warcraft, Dota, and League of Legends in 2009, the modern RTS as we know it kinda died. I mean, not entirely died, because new releases are still chugging along, and we even got a remake of Age of Mythology that came out this fucking week and is apparently doing very well for itself. StarCraft 2 is the grandpappy of modern esports as we know them today, and single-handedly showed how live-streaming video games on the internet would be a serious avenue for both content creation and money-making. But while they have cemented themselves from a cultural standpoint, real-time strategy as a genre of competitive video game hasn't seen the same
terrifying lows, the dizzying highs, the creamy middles
as they once did with StarCraft Brood War and StarCraft 2. I'm getting off track again. Deadlock being a MOBA isn't surprising. IceFrog, one of the lead programmers and developers of Dota All-Stars and Dota 2, has been working on this with a fresh team for the past 6 years at the time of writing. Deadlock had been rumored to be in development on and off during this time period, but nothing concrete until a few months ago when this early playtest build was made available under a handshake NDA. Said NDA, which was lifted last weekend, so I've been playing what I can. And all I can say so far is that this can be dangerous for someone like me. And to do that, I need to talk about the game itself properly. If you've somehow managed to go this entire time without learning how a MOBA works, first of all, I fucking envy you. And second, here's the cursed knowledge. MOBAs are played on isometric, kind of asymmetric maps with lanes that stretch from the bases of both teams to center points on the map. Usually, there's a lot of areas in between those lanes filled with monsters called the jungle that give extra money and XP. But I'm getting ahead of myself. With the exception of one player that goes into the jungle in order to get all that free money and XP, usually the team breaks off into these lanes with like 1 or 2 players each per lane, and you push the minion waves to the towers that defend their territory, and destroy those until you get to the enemy base, and destroy that in order to win. Yay, you did the thing. And to an extent, that's still very much the case with Deadlock. You have guardians, and giant spider robots, and an otherworldly patron that you gotta blow up. But a lot of the more specialized stuff that MOBAs have is streamlined by way of the hero shooter elements. All characters have stamina that can be used for a bunch of movement techniques, such as mantling, double jumping, air dashing, dodge rolling, and a long jump that can be pulled off by jumping out of a roll. And while this is very much a work in progress build, this is still Valve we're talking about. Their work in progress is still better than most games' ship states, and as a result of that, the act of just moving and shooting just feels really good. While a lot of that just comes from Valve being really good at making video games, it also comes into play in how the hero abilities mix and match and map on top of that. which means I need to talk about the characters and the theming. Deadlock's set in what's essentially a fantasy noir 1930s gangland New York City, following the opening of a supernatural portal in Central Park that allowed all sorts of demons and magical creatures to just spill through. Almost all of the characters have been informed with this in mind. Some standouts are Abrams, a blue devil of a detective that's just a stone fist away from being Hellboy. I love him. You also got Wraith, a psychic gambler who runs the illicit gambling trade in New York City, whilst decked out in a slick trench coat covering 2 loose arm shoe puppets with telekinesis that wield a motherfucking Chicago typewriter.
Alright, I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't.
You have Warden, a militant alchemist police officer, Kelvin, a traveling adventurer who occupies May from Overwatch's niche of that jerk with the freeze gun, and Lash. Lash is an asshole. That's all you need to know. You also got Hayes, a dream assassin that works for a division of the US government so secretive and off the record that they make the CIA look like an open and thoroughly read book. Bebop, a scrap metal android who fights in illegal pit fights to raise money for his sick creator's medical treatments. I also love him. Vindicta, a victim of the Salem witch trials brought back from the dead as a self-imposed defender of non-humans. Ivy, a gargoyle brought to life who is now the self-appointed defender of Spanish Harlem. Viscus, who's a hyper-intelligent sea anemone from the Bermuda Triangle. The list goes on and on. The art style used to bring them all to life is what I'm calling a cross between Team Fortress and Dota that does one thing particularly well. It makes the entire cast of characters feel like weirdo freaks. And I mean that in a good way. Every character in Deadlock has that weirdo freak energy to them, even the more conventional characters in the cast. And I like it because this is a setting/version of New York City where the supernatural and the mundane all intermingle with each other to the point where nothing phases anyone anymore. And it's New York City. This is just another interpretation of it being a cultural melting pot. And unsurprisingly, it leads to a lot of ridiculous gameplay moments. While a lot of what I'm showing right now is basic one-on-one skirmishes and pushing lanes, the team fights in Deadlock can get absolutely fucking ridiculous. Effects are flying, people are getting sniped out of nowhere, and Lash is being an asshole. But I will say that the changes Deadlock makes to the standard MOBA formula are pretty nice for a former League and Smite player like myself. Whenever those games get updates to the itemization, which is what you spend your money on to get more powerful, it feels like it can be an arcane process to learn all of that shit all over again, especially when you haven't played in a couple years, like I often tend to do. Deadlock just goes, here's what each thing does. You want your guns to hit harder? Buy items with gun damage increases. Do you want your abilities to hit harder? Go spirit damage increases. Buy the corresponding armor for the damage type you want to resist. That's it. And it feels so nice. And this is extra helpful since most of the cast can do a lot of damage, to the point where it leads to games being very close. I've had games where I get shit stomped in lane and proceed to win and vice versa. And while I will admit that there are some outliers in terms of balance, sorry about that, throat was a bit dry. But I fully acknowledge that this is still a closed test and stuff is definitely going to be changed. But right now, Deadlock is a lot of fun. Some more things I do like that keeps things focused on the action. Like that there are just shops in lane that you can buy stuff from instead of having to go back to base in order to do so. I like these wires you can zip line all over the map on, where the more of your lane you got pushed up, the faster they make you go. Great for getting back into things when you die. And I especially like how Deadlock never feels like it's a drag. Just when you think it's overstayed its welcome, the game ends. While it may be a work in progress, Deadlock has a lot of promise. It's a masterful combination of MOBA and Hero Shooter that manages to get you interested with its cast of wonderful weirdos and keeps you interested with its mechanical understanding of how these games work. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on this one, because if for no other reason, Valve knows how to make a damn fine video game.